think we're ready. Ready to? Okay. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the order the continuation of the special city council meeting for April the 17th. Mayor Bob Odekirk presiding.
Begin with roll call. Mayor Odekirk.
Here.
Councilman Dickinson.
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Here.
Councilman Hug.
Here.
Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilman Mudrin.
Here.
Councilwoman Pullman.
Here.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Here.
Councilman Turk.
Here.
Let the record show Councilman Dickinson, Councilwoman Gavin, Councilwoman Reardon, and Councilman Turk are attending remotely. We closed the public hearing at yesterday's continuation meeting, and so tonight we would discuss the Council Memo 222-20, which is the resolution approving and authorizing execution of a pre-annexation agreement for 1,260 acres with Eastgate Logistics Park Chicago LLC for Compass Business Park.
All right. Thank you. I guess we'll start the conversation. I know there's questions for staff and then for North Point. Do you want to go first, Steve, or you want to have North Point go first?
However the council would like to do it, I'll also point out that the management team, with any involvement in this project, is also available for questions as well.
All right. Well, I'll start. I got a few questions. Some that were given to me, some that I just want to see reiterated. If you can you give us a breakdown of the property taxes that this is going to generate, and then the different taxing bodies they're going to benefit from this?
Sure. Over the last 2 to 3 months, we've massaged some of the estimates of where we think a full build-out of the project would be. And they're fairly consistent with what North Point's estimates are. Our estimates are approximately 2.5 million to all taxing bodies that have built out. At the present time, North Point's around 2.8. So we're utilizing a more conservative number. From the city's perspective, we would expect that the 2.5 would be generated for our purposes, but overall, 16 million square feet, dollar a square foot in today's dollars, about $16 million to all taxing bodies. If we break that down, Jackson Township, 187,000 approximately, Jackson Township road funds, 334,000, School District 70C, 5.2 million, High School District 204, 4.8 million, Community College District 525, 545,000, Joliet Park District 818,000, Joliet Public Library 363, and Will County 1.1 million. So once again, rule of thumb being about $1 a square foot generated from a large industrial building.
So a couple of things. Obviously, this would be every year, so it's not a one-time thing.
Correct.
But we're also talking full build-out. This isn't going to happen next year, the year after, the year after. This is down the road when it's fully built out.
That's correct.
But those numbers will rise incrementally as more gets built there.
Exactly, and over time, tax rates do increase as well, values increase. So obviously, the dollar per square foot over time will increase, based on inflation and increased value. But starting out at something less than 16 million square feet at the beginning, eventually becoming 16 million square feet.
All right, and I talked about this on the radio yesterday about the North Point deal versus the Center Point deal. You probably have the facts in front of you. If not, I'll try to do it off the top of my head. But there's a lot of numbers floating around about Center Point. Could you, I guess Mike and Jan, you were the only two here when they happened, or were you on the council?
Not quite.
Okay. So to familiarize everybody and the people watching.
Yes. The important thing is that these are, apples and oranges. Obviously, each of the two developments did a lot. In one case, did a lot. In the other case, is proposing a lot of different unique infrastructure components. But these are just some of the hard facts as to dollars and cents. Centerpoint, there was an initial $9 million contribution that was made as part of the development,
And in addition to that, there was a $2 million subsequent contribution. The first $9 million went, it was our choice of how we spent it. It was utilized for the grant match for the Gateway Center project. The $2 million subsequent contribution went to improve Laraway Road. So it was actually part of the development itself. It benefited the development. Some other considerations with Centerpoint over time, there have been some tax abatements where we've had some users come in and look for the 5-year 50% tax abatement. It wasn't part of the annexation agreement, but it was something that was certainly thrown into the development process that encouraged some of those properties to become developed. In the case of the Compass Business Park, the way the present annexation agreement reads, there's an initial contribution upon the annexation of the property in the amount of $2 million, and then there is a contribution based on square feet through the development. It's 33 cents per square foot, and if we look at the total build out, it would basically come to 6,620,000 square feet. Tiny caveat to that, as council knows, one of the goals of the city has
So
been.
you said 6,620,000 square foot?
I'm sorry, let me say that again.
Yeah.
The subsequent development is $4,620,000.
Okay,
And the cap there is $6,620,000.
got it.
And it's based upon a 16 million square foot build out. Little caveat there, that 33 cents applies to any building that is not manufacturing, is not office, or is not something that would generate sales tax. So in effect, it's a way to achieve some other goals of the city. We've obviously had goals of bringing more manufacturing jobs to the community. If they were to identify those type of users, then there would be less development contribution. So achieving one goal as opposed to another. There are two considerations for land. One is we're requiring a dedication of up to 50, well, not up to, of a 15-acre parcel for potential public safety facility. This conceptually would be for police fire training, perhaps even a fire station if the development of the southern end of our community would warrant perhaps a relocation of our existing speedway station. So it's a way where we would lock in that land that's worth approximately $2.6 million. Also, because of the fact that we have a lot of unknowns in our south end, how much water capacity do we need? What are the storage requirements? Do we need a treatment plant? We're requiring up to 15 acres of additional parcels to be dedicated for utility purposes. So in effect, you throw that in there too. If you add those $4 components, the two requirements for land, the two requirements for cash, it comes to about 12.6. One thing that's not valued, because we really don't know the specifics, it would be worked out through Joliet Junior College. The developer has agreed to construct what they're calling a learning and career center. It would be utilized in one of the buildings that would be built by North Point. And it would be for job training, having classes out there, pretty much an extension of what JJC does on their campus, but something that would be more applicable to the industrial sector. Obviously, if it's built for them, there's a value there. They would operate it, so it's a little hard to throw a dollar amount on that. I pointed out the fact that there were some tax abatements within Centerpoint. There are no tax abatements or incentives being offered as part of this. All the infrastructure is at the expense of the developer. And then, we've talked about the bridge again and again and again. Obviously, there's a dollar value to that. That's approximately $25 million project to keep that closed loop system. And then I should have mentioned, of course, with Centerpoint, at present we're talking about the potential for a Hobo Road Bridge, which is at the expense of Centerpoint, that of course will be paid for by tolls. So again, apples and oranges projects. So I think, the side-by-side is interesting, but it's not necessarily something where you could say, this has to equal or this has to exceed. These projects are different.
Okay. Couple other questions that were submitted. One, Could you clarify the travel arrangements for Joliet elected officials and the public comments related to a private jet?
Oh, yeah, there were no elected officials on a private jet. Actually, it was media and staff. When council had started to talk about the need to really figure out how the North Point project would work in Joliet, at some point there was a suggestion made that perhaps we go down to Kansas City. I think we had 2 council people who actually drove down there, and the rest were either on Southwest flights with me or on Southwest flights with other staffers, which of course the city paid for. We had an offer, North Point said, you want us to pay for it? I'm like, no, I mean, the optics of that are terrible. We're doing the research, we will, make the arrangements, we'll figure out who we want to talk to, we'll find out, what are the specifics. So in effect, there were no elected officials on a private jet.
Okay. Next one, there was a caller who indicated property tax rebates were part of the enterprise zone incentive being sought. Can you clarify that, please?
Yes. In the enterprise zone that is proposed for extension, it's the Village of Diamond. In Illinois, different enterprise zones have different incentives, and it's adopted through the state, so it's a pretty rigid process. The Village of Diamond enterprise zone does not have property tax abatements, just like our own Des Plaines River Valley enterprise zone that we're part of. In fact, we're sitting in it right now. There is no property tax abatement. The incentives involve the state sales tax, there's some state investment credits, and then there's some state utility tax exemptions. And the sales tax really relates to construction materials, machinery that goes into the initial construction. It's not something where if there's a sales tax generator, somehow there's an abatement over a 10-year period. So in some there are, but certainly not in the Village of Diamond and not within the city of Joliet.
So that wouldn't be possible here?
No.
Mayor,
Yeah.
tonight, and we went through this a couple of years ago, when you talk about the state portion of the sales tax, which is 6.25%, I believe, right?
Correct.
But the abatement is on that portion, and the intent of that portion of the enterprise zone is to encourage developers and contractors to buy local. It's restricted to where they buy within the zone or defined area, and they get that rebate. But our taxes, local, stay the same, correct?
Correct. We have home rule sales tax, so that's on top of.
Which is 2.75%.
I believe so.
Right. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And one final question, had to do, because this has come up a couple times too. I know we explained this before, but the letter that I signed a year and a half, 2 years ago about the bridge over, Route 53, you know the background because you came to me with it. Could you
I
explain
drafted it.
Yeah.
It was, I'm not sure how many months after the Pritzker election, but obviously the whole traffic issue of Route 53 traffic, a lot of job creation, a lot of truck vehicles, it's been something that's been on the radar screen for many years. After the election of the new governor, North Point had reached out to the region, not just Joliet, but had basically said, we're interested in making sure that the new governor knows that everybody around here has concerns on Route 53 traffic, and we'd appreciate a letter supporting our project. I believe at the time their zoning petition, I think their zoning petition was in the hands of the county. So in effect, it was a live project. So what we did is we just point out the fact that there's a bridge that potentially would mitigate traffic on Route 53, and we were supportive of it. It wasn't too different from a letter that actually had been written a couple years earlier, I believe by Jim Hogg, and there was also a letter that the Illinois Department of Transportation Secretary wrote, and I think that one was actually generated to the then president of Elwood, saying, IDOT supports this concept because of the fact that it'll be reducing traffic. So the letter and the draft that we put together was to talk about traffic. I'm sure people were, putting things together that didn't exist, like we were in the process of looking at this development. We weren't. It was, if it was going to be developed, we were interested in there being a bridge.
And at the time, you were the economic development director for the city?
Correct.
Okay, and like you said, you wrote the letter brought it to me, I signed the letter, like I do with a dozen letters a day that staff brings to me, so. But, yeah, no, there are people trying to make that connection that, that there was some secret negotiation going on that I was a part of. Again, you were the economic development director. Was there any talk with North Point at all at that point?
Well, they made the request for the letter.
Right.
We being staff had met with North Point, I want to say 2 times before they came forward with the 103 acres. Once, and I don't have my notes in front of me, once they had told us that they had a petition with the county, you know, and said, just so you know, we're doing this, we're in your neighborhood. Probably not very dissimilar to what they've done with neighborhood groups, where they just want to tell people what's going on. And I believe then they met with us to tell us about the fact that they were buying property in the area, some of it on our side of the boundary, and said, you know, what would happen if we were to come up with a development on that property, our side of the boundary agreement. We said, bring it in and we'll consider it like we do all other projects. And then all of our other discussions from that point involved 103 acres. And then I think it was on January 3rd, a few days after the boundary agreement expired, that they came forward and said, we need to talk. And then they started the process of this development.
Okay. All right, any other questions for Steve up here on the dais?
Not right now.
How about Mike, you got any questions for Steve? Mike? Sherry, any questions for Steve?
No, I was just going to ask Steve the same question you asked him about the where the monies would go from the taxing for the taxing bodies.
Okay. Betty?
Mayor?
Oh, go ahead, Mike. Any questions for Steve?
I'm sorry, I had my phone on mute, so I wouldn't, feedback. So I do have a question to Steve.
Okay, go ahead.
Steve, in the years I've been around, and I could have missed something, but I don't recall ever a pre-annexation agreement. Can you tell me the difference between a pre-annexation agreement and an annexation agreement?
Sure, I'll start.
Is there much of a difference, or are they?
I'll start, and if I get in trouble, I'll turn to our corporation counsel. Since I've been here, which is a little less than 5 years, I don't recall there being a pre-annexation agreement, but certainly in my career, I've worked in towns where it's been done. I think the question always becomes, at what stage of a project is it? Obviously, North Point has a lot of land that they need to close on and acquire. So in effect, would they be spending all the money to do final engineering and a lot of the consulting work necessary without having some reasonable assurance that the city was proceeding? So I think because of the magnitude of the project, I think it's not an unusual situation to get the commitments first and then have them start spending the real money to get the project into some shape or form to move forward. So I think it's more of a semantic issue calling it a pre-annexation agreement versus an annexation agreement. I'm looking at Marty, so there'll be a delay.
And Councilman, this is essentially the same thing that was done with the Center Point. I think they call theirs a development agreement. So I just, like Mr. Jones said, it's more of semantics.
Okay. And then my next question was, I'm assuming a formal annexation agreement will come up that has to come before the council also?
No,
Is that correct?
correct.
The answer was no, Mike.
Thank you.
Does not have to.
Will not come back to us for?
Correct.
I'm sorry, I'm confused.
No, it does not have to come back.
Not coming back to us for?
Correct, just like with Center Point, it's the same thing.
Okay.
Anything else, Mike?
No.
Betty, any questions for Steve or staff?
Mike just asked my question. He's a little sidekick over there, but yeah, he just asked my question. Thank you.
Okay, how about you, Don?
No, my question has been answered. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Any questions for North Point?
What, no, I have one more
Oh,
question
go ahead, yes.
for Marty.
I have one after that.
Marty, I know it's semantics, but, so what you're saying was the North Point development, or not, excuse me, Center Point development years ago was called a development agreement, not a pre-annexation agreement?
Yes.
And so, with the pre-annexation that's tagged onto this, why was this not called a development agreement?
Just we staff looked at it, and that's we thought this was more akin to a pre-annexation agreement as opposed to a development agreement. But that's the template that we follow.
Because I know that's confusing for folks. That's the problem. Okay, thank you.
First, and Steve, Mayor, you can let me know, maybe you guys, staff has already set it up. I had requested after talking to Allison that she'll come and address some of the concerns brought up about water. Is she gonna come a little bit later, or is she waiting for questions?
While you were asking this question, she's probably on her way up because she was going to be watching in the lobby.
Okay, so I wanted to get that clear. We did have somebody walking around publicly, you know, here they publicly stated it. They made a statement that we are on a path of 1 to 6 years before we're out of water, and that's not even accurate. So I wanted to have the impact. And then I had one question for Marty after she's done. Thank you, Allison. You know what I'd asked you, right?
Yes,
Okay.
so we have continued to work with the Illinois State Water Survey, who is the technical body that's been updating the groundwater model that we've been using to make those determinations as to when we will no longer be able to rely on our existing water source. And so in 2018, they completed an update of that model, and that identified 2030 as the year that the city would no longer be able to meet its maximum day demands. So I do not have any idea where the 1 to 6 year timeframe came from, but that's not based on the current guidance from the Illinois State Water Survey. Furthermore, we asked the State Water Survey to add in the potential water demands for the North Point development into the model. They did that earlier this month, and that showed that that would not have any impact on that 2030 projection.
And to be clear, now I brought up two things, the North Point and of course our Water Commission study that we've done. Mm-hmm. The reason we have a 10-year, for our residents, we have a 10-year schedule is because within 10 years, the Water Commission and engineers from staff, mainly the Water Commission has determined that's when we'll start to not be able to meet peak demand. And then by 2030, that's when you would have, it won't be bone dry, but we'll say it could be dry.
Yes, and for certain geological reasons I won't get into that are very detailed, those initial maximum day demands we would not be able to meet on the far west side of the city. And so the wells that are located on the eastern side of the city, would be further along in that time frame of when they would not be able to meet those demands.
And nothing is, the impact having the water survey, add that into the modeling, it didn't have a noticeable effect, good or bad.
That's correct. The impact was negligible.
One last question for those that are watching that might explain to them briefly what the water survey is.
So the Illinois State Water Survey is a group of scientists that work under the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana, and so they're the experts in this field and really are the only entity that maintains a groundwater model for these purposes.
And not just for our area, for the entire state.
That's correct, for the entire state.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marty, some folks hadn't, understood. We got hung up, some people got hung up on, it doesn't say that if this first bridge proposal over 53 fails, that it has to be a bridge. I had explained to some people that you got to understand the process is that it went through the Plan Commission, who did attach that, it's in the minutes, and was part of the motion, and then you had the proposal, and ultimately, that's what, makes it mandatory. However, you and I talked a couple of days ago, and even though it's redundant, I believe you made a change in that wording?
Yes, you were very insistent. So here's what the language says, which is in the revised agreement, and alternate, presuming, let's just say that the proposed bridge doesn't go through as where it's supposed to go through. Okay. An alternate location would require a bridge over Route 53 to provide safe and restricted access to the property.
That's plain and simple enough. And as I said, it's kind of redundant because it had already been established. I think what people need to understand, if they don't already understand, is nothing that's in that document or in the recommendation from the Planning Commission is final until these 9 folks say it's final. We could make changes as we just did in the wording. We can make changes in the spirit, and we can make the final approval if we were to approve it with conditions added, and then there would be a reworked document. That's how the process works. Am I correct, Marty?
Yes. And there is one thing that Mayor, I want to follow up on a question that you had actually. This land will still need to go back before council for annexation, for true annexation and zoning.
Okay, isn't that what Mike Turk just asked?
Yeah, he asked that.
It will come back to, not an annexation agreement, but to annex and zone.
So it still has to come in front of the council?
So yes. So I apologize if I was confusing councilman.
To be clear, what you're saying is then it doesn't go back to the plan commission and go through an annex, because the pre-annexation went through the plan commission.
Yes.
Now the council, the committee as a whole as a council will decide whether to permanently annex it.
Yes.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Well, at this point, everything comes back to us after this, correct? Anything that has to happen?
Yes.
We agree on everything? Okay.
Okay. Anything else for staff? All right, how about North Point, Councilwoman? I think you had some.
Yes.
So hold on, are we gonna video them in, or, okay.
Good evening. This is Tom George.
Hi, Tom. Councilman.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, this is Jan Quillman, Councilwoman at Large. A couple questions that I have for you tonight. Are you going to be willing to purchase properties if people wish to sell at a good purchase price? That are near the, near the
Yeah,
Compass Park and the boundaries?
Yes. I think that's something we would want to work together with you over the next few months to determine impacted properties, and certainly we would be willing to purchase those at some premium to their appraised value. Very definitely.
Okay, because I did work with the residents down at Center Point at that time, years ago. Up until just 2 years ago, I was still working with one resident that was kind of stubborn, but in the end, it all worked out. So that's pretty much what I wanted to have say for the record, because people were asking me about that. And number two, I'm really concerned with the $2 million. I would really like to see more money up front.
Okay. We can certainly talk about that. I do want to just share one item is that, the Center Point Park was 33,274 acres. So, their contribution was about $2,600 per acre. Our contribution is $5,200 per acre. So it is double that. So, but if you're happy with the contribution amount and would like to see more up front.
So I'd like to see more monies up front.
Okay. What kind of more money are you talking about?
$5 million.
$5 million. So the initial contribution right now is 2 up front and 4 over time. You would like to see that switched to 5 up front then, with still the $6.62 million cap.
No, not over time. I want the monies up front. Like we were supposed to get the $2 million up front, I want to see the 5 up front.
That's what I said.
Yep, this one's.
Well, then it was breaking up. I didn't get it all. Okay, thank you, Terry.
Okay, so the total being the same, but more money right now,
Correct.
just to be clear.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you make that happen?
Yes, we can. I know there's critical times right now, so we would be willing to shift the money to a sooner date. So the $5 million now, we'd be willing to do that.
Marty, is that, What does that cause legally? Do we have to change the contract then?
We would just have to change the agreement. We'll have to go through right now and find out what the clause is.
Do we need to pause for a minute, or should we go?
No, you can keep going.
Okay.
So I have a question to the proposal just made by the councilwoman, and I want to make sure we're all clear on this. Right now, we have a 33% per square, and I think that's what Mr. George is saying. Instead of waiting for the 33 cents, are you asking to, in other words, stay at the 6.5 million cap, but get 5 million up front? Or are you still expecting 33 cents a square foot? That's what he was kind of asking, I think, because I was curious myself.
Well, there was a 6.5 million cap with 2 million up front,
Right.
and I wanted to see 5 million up front.
So then there would be.
But it still would be the 33 cents.
But with a $1.5 million cap.
Well, probably if that's what it is, but
If you have the agreement in front of you,
I don't, so-
it's within section 7A. And it would be a fairly easy change. We have a reference, and I'll read it. It says, upon annexation of substantially all the property as set forth in this agreement, developer shall make a non-refundable contribution to the city in the amount of $2 million. That would be changed to $5 million. And then later on, it talks about the 33 cents. It talks about the fact that that 33 cents does not apply to manufacturing and the other types of uses I talked about. And then later on, it says it shall not exceed $6,620,000. So really, all it would have to do is take out the 2 million and insert 5 million within the agreement.
Wanted to be clear.
okay.
Since we're doing it on the fly, I don't want anybody to, whatever happens tonight, I don't want the folks watching from, that live in the city.
Well, I never thought 2 million up front was enough anyway. I always thought that we should have had more. I've been talking about this for a month.
I guess the question is, Steve, and what's being proposed here, so I can follow it, are we talking about overall, all things the same? We're adding 3 million, we're getting 3 million more than we were originally have gotten, not just up front. We're gonna get the same total amount. We're just pushing more to the front.
Correct.
Okay,
So
thank you.
3 million more in initial contribution than what the agreement says.
So we'll collect 3 million less at the back end.
Correct.
All right, thank you, thank you. I want to be clear.
Okay.
So we're good?
I think they're running a draft of it to bring up.
Okay.
Change 2 to a 5 still?
I'm sorry.
Change 2 to a 5?
Yeah.
Do you have other questions?
Not at this moment.
All right. I have a number, again, these aren't necessarily from me, but they were handed to me, so. Number one, is North Point foreign owned? Please describe the ownership of the company.
Sure, happy to. North Point is 70% owned by the employees, and the other 30% of North Point is owned by 2 long-standing Kansas City families.
Okay. Number two.
There is no foreign ownership of North Point.
Okay, thank you. Number two, there was a reference to 59 intersections being examined as part of the North Point traffic study or the ongoing traffic studies. Please explain, are there 59 entrances to North Point?
No. So there'll be, the thing we really like about the park is that there is access to the park 360 degrees. There'll be 9 different ways to get into the park. And again, only for cars though. One way for trucks, one way in, one way out, but for cars there'll be 9 ways in and out from north, south, east, and west. So we wanted to study all the intersections in all 4 directions to make sure we adequately improve any of those intersections that might need it based on our automobile traffic only.
Okay. Number three, it was stated that North Point can request that the city allow some access points within the park to be open for non-automobile uses. Can you please clarify and explain the circumstances in which the closed loop could be removed?
So that would be a temporary / emergency type situation. The city would be completely in control of that. Typically, we would assume that would be something we would all have discussed prior to it happening. For example, if something, as we said, we are building a 4-lane bridge, so it's highly unlikely that the bridge would ever need to be completely closed. But if for some reason it did, that we would communicate with the city of the situation and work with the city and the police department to coordinate which entrance would be used on a short-term basis during that closure. But again, it would be something that, it is stated in the agreement, it's in the city's control and meant to be a short-term or emergency type situation.
One follow-up question
Yes,
on
go
that,
ahead.
just to clarify. So, and what you explained is what I've read. So to summarize it, would it be safe to say, and certainly you want to be anybody in a public-private partnership who wants to, do the best thing for everybody involved, but ultimately declaring that an emergency is up to the city officials at the time that it happens, and whether or not it qualifies to create an alternative.
That is my understanding, yes. That's how we drafted it, that's how we intended.
Thank you.
And then last question, assuming that this proposal is approved, what is the best case and worst case scenarios you anticipate for a full build-out?
So we anticipate the full build out of the park to take between 10 and 20 years.
Okay, there you go. All right, any other questions on the dais? Barry?
Not right now.
Jan? Pat?
Yeah, I have an email from a resident, and I don't know whose fault it is, but he says he's right in the middle of the footprint of this park, and he was never notified of anything, not even the meeting the other night. So I was wondering if you could reach out to this gentleman and talk to him. I have his name and email here. I won't give it publicly, I'll just email it to
Okay.
you.
Yeah. There are only 3 homes that are located within the park, so, and actually there are 2 more north of Manhattan Road, so maybe that's possible. But certainly everybody received the neighbor meeting within 300 feet of all boundaries. But, snafus do happen, and possibly their invitation didn't make it. So certainly we'll follow up, and appreciate you providing that to me.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right, Mike, you have any questions?
No, I don't, Mayor.
Betty, any questions?
Yes, Mayor, just one question for me. In terms, and I guess it's for Tom, actually. Tom, you talked a little bit about the entry into the park. And so if there's not 59 ways, I think you said it was 9 ways for the cars and just only 1 route for the trucks. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Sherry, any questions?
Yeah, I have a few. One is got several parts to it. This is in regards to the bridge. Where are you in the approval process currently for that bridge? Once the construction begins, what is the estimated time it would take to construct? And just, again, people are asking, who is responsible for the cost to construct and maintain the bridge?
Great. Okay, all good questions. So where we're at in approval, we have an ongoing piece of litigation on the bridge that should come to a head, we believe, in June, or somewhere, depending on the COVID-19 shutdown, somewhere in that time frame. And we were just talking and catching up with council on that here today. As far as the time to design, permit, and construct the bridge, we have the bridge sits at about 33% design today. We had submitted 30% complete drawings to IDOT on that. So we would need to finish the design and then seek the permits. And that would take the better part of the summer. But by the end of the summer, we would hope to be constructing embankments. We do like to build the embankments so that they have time to settle, so we don't get the type of bump that most overpasses have. And then through the winter, we would do foundation work and finish the bridge in the summer of 2021. The bridge would be paid for by North Point and maintained by North Point and by the park.
Great. Another question. Will Manhattan Road, once the closed loop is established, will Manhattan Road be accessible as a direct route in and out of the business park once that is complete?
So Manhattan Road has two roads that, one road, Rowell, intersects Manhattan and then comes right down into the park. So we will have to do improvements at the corner of Rowell and Manhattan Road. Eventually, we'll also do improvements at the corner of Manhattan and 53. And for cars will be able to access the park from Manhattan Road on Rowell Road. I'm not sure if I've answered your question. Trucks, of course, would not be able to use Manhattan Road in any way, shape, or form.
That's what I wanted to hear, which was what I assumed, but always good to hear.
Yeah.
And then
There would be a barrier. There would be a barrier located at that spot with the truck turnaround, so that none of our trucks could leave. And we own the property there, so we have the room to build that. And then no trucks, of course, could enter at that spot.
And then my last question. North Point has talked about the decrease in traffic on Route 53. Given the information that we've been made aware of from Burlington Northern, their dramatic increased expectation of lifts, along with the UP, how is it possible that we're looking to see a decrease in? I guess I'd just like you to explain it to the residents how we see this as being a decrease in traffic for 53.
Right. So there'll be a couple things that'll cause to help lead to that decrease. One will be by having a park that is directly connected to the intermodal. The further development of facilities on 53 will slow or stop. We think stop. When, for example, you have the facility right now, NFI occupies at Millsdale. That facility is directly adjacent to the intermodal, and yet it is actually the furthest from the intermodal of all of its neighbors because of the distance it has to travel, almost 180 degrees all the way around to the other side to enter the intermodal off of 55. So, or go the other way south, but either way to 55 to get to the intermodal. So it will reduce the opportunity, the demand for further development on 53. If not for this park, development on 53 will continue, and folks will continue to dump 100% of their traffic onto 53. In addition to that, this park certainly will be the largest constituent eventually of the whole road bridge. And if there's any consternation remaining on that at all, this will certainly tip it over as to being able to pay the tolls and justify that bridge and actually reduce the price of the tolls. Then the other part of it is any facility that is intermodal related that locates outside of the intermodal, we know causes up to 4 trips. So you have 72 hours once your container lands. You have 72 hours to get that container out of the intermodal. If you're located in Minooka, for example, then you call a drayman, he picks that up, and he makes a trip to Minooka, and then he makes a trip back empty. You have 72 hours to empty that container, and then it has to be returned to the intermodal. So again, an empty bobtail drives to Minooka, hooks that container up and brings it back. That's 4 trips. And if you drive on I was on I-80 today, just today, counting all the bobtails that were passing me between New Lenox and 53, and there were 10 bobtails just in that short area heading east on 80. So that's what we want to eliminate. We want to eliminate all that back and forth traffic that is running these containers to all these facilities, including the facilities that are located on 53, and capture that and keep it inside the intermodal. We can't stop the over-the-road truck that will eventually come to take it to a store. Wherever the facility is located, eventually there will be that truck. But we want to stop the 4 trips that are just back and forth for the container. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. And that's all I have.
Okay. Don, any questions?
No, Mayor, everything's been answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I did something
Sure.
in my mind. Tom, I know when I spoke, I don't remember exactly who it was, but going back to the trucks not being able to enter into North Point that may come from either 57, Interstate 57, and I know some callers mentioned that the other day when I wasn't asleep, I guess. So we had talked about it, again, I don't remember if it was you or someone with North Point about contacting the GPS people, but it was that Google Maps or something, or how do we inform the truck companies that's sending the trucks to North Point that they have to enter in over the bridge, where they're not following their GPS along, get off, not to come to 80, to get off at 57 at some point, south of 80, and try to come west and come through Manhattan or Elwood or up Lairway Road. How do we avoid or try to avoid that?
That's a great question. And I think the mayor even made a comment about that on the radio the other day. If you build facilities on 53, 100% of their traffic will be on 53. If you build Compass Business Park, the only thing that will be anywhere on any other road is the person who's not supposed to be there. And we really care about that person who's not supposed to be there. So we need to be very proactive. Everybody has their systems that they use for their trucking. Every truck is tracked 100% of the time. And so for anybody who's a regular customer, they of course will know that if they try to enter this park the wrong way and come down the Manhattan-Moni Blacktop from 57, that they just cost themselves an extra 45 minutes because they will have to then go all the way around to 55 to get in this park. But we will work very proactively with every owner, every tenant in the park to make sure that their systems are giving their drivers exactly how to come, and especially and most importantly for the driver who is only going to come there once. This is the over-the-road truck that may only come to this facility one time. We need to make very sure that they're working with them to approach the park in the right way. There's a lot of sophisticated systems out there for this. Most trucking companies have their own proprietary systems, and when the order is placed, that proprietary set of those set of directions go into that proprietary system. Because the last thing a trucking company wants to do is waste a minute. Nobody wants to waste any time. So we will be very aggressive with that. There's also a new system out there that one of the county board members was representing that we're working with that would give very detailed instructions to the driver, even within the park, even within a building, to tell them literally which driveway to turn into. So this is the technology that's coming. We're planning to build the park to be very receptive to the next level of technology. We're also planning to build the park to be very receptive to electric vehicles. So we want to be very careful and very thoughtful in that, so that our tenants will do the very best to make sure that there's not a lost truck. And then if there is, we're going to have our information center at the front of the park where a truck can pull in there and get very specific directions and be sent back on their way. Of course, they cannot enter the park, but we'll send them on their way safely so that they don't go anywhere else they're not supposed to be.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And I'll piggyback on that. I think it's a good answer because that is one real legitimate concern. We could talk about a closed loop and how we intend to do this, but we know from our experience, especially with Centerpoint, that there are wayward trucks. And anyone who's talked to any of the neighbors around Centerpoint, that's a common refrain about trucks being where they're not supposed to be. So thank you for addressing that.
You're welcome. It's been a concern of ours from the very beginning, as we said, in meeting with the cemetery and meeting with the folks in Elwood, and meeting with the folks up and down 53. It's a really, really important thing. So we're investing a lot of money in our information center and turnaround, and we want to invite any truck in. It doesn't matter if he's coming to our park or he or she is coming to our park or any park. We want to invite him in and get them set on their way safely so that they're not trying to find a back way or causing anybody any harm.
Mayor? Yes.
One last question. Can you give us the most recent update if there's been any changes or anything that, further discussed for both the Midwin Tallgrass that you've been communicating with, as well as for the Abraham Lincoln Veteran Cemetery?
Sure. So we met with Midwin 3 years ago, and the comment that Midwin had was they were very happy. If you remember from that plan that I put up, the Village of Elwood plans for their industrial to grow right along Hoff Road, which is immediately adjacent to Midwin. And the Midwin folks were very happy that our plan would move the industrial north half a mile. So that was really the only comment they had on that topic. They were also excited about the fact that the bridge would be built, and the bridge would include a path for pedestrians and cyclists to be able to connect Midwin to the Village of Elwood, and also to the eventual Route 66 path. So far that all seems to be good, and we have not heard any other direct problem or commentary or anything from Midwin itself. So we're happy with that. The cemetery we met with 3 years ago with the Village of Elwood, and we met with 2 months ago. And again, the cemetery's only issue, and they made it loud and clear, is the errant truck that does turn around in the cemetery. The closure of Walter Strawn created a situation where they have this problem now, and it's a real problem. So as I presented in my presentation on Monday, we want to do everything we can to work with them. I think there's a lot of things that can be done through technology and signage that really are not being done right now, and that's because Route 53 is a state route, and they don't have the flexibility to do it exactly the way they want. But if you go down there, you'll see the no truck signs, and I think just the signage could do a lot. But in addition to that, we've offered to build a barrier and a truck turnaround inside the entrance to the cemetery. That's something that they will carefully consider and may say no to. And if they do, that's certainly understand. If they'd like it, we will build it and maintain it. But we're going to work in every way we can to stop this from happening. And we didn't create the problem, but we know it's there. And since folks won't be able to get into our park either, we don't want it to be worse. We want it to get better. And that's the reason for the big turnaround and the big information center on Mississippi just off of 53.
Thank you.
Question.
Yes.
Mayor,
Hold on, Mike.
it's Mike. Okay.
Go ahead, Jim.
So, Tom, you met with the Midwin folks 3 years ago, no contact since then?
No, we haven't met with them since then. We certainly would be happy to do that. Like I said, we did not get any, we have not heard of any consternation on their part.
Well, I have.
They
That's
were
why I'm
happy that the
concerned
park
you
was
haven't
being-
talked to them.
Okay.
Can't talk about
Oh, sorry. I said, I have had some concerns from folks, and I didn't realize it had been 3 years since you had talked to them. So I would have hoped that you would reach out to them sooner than later. And you said 2 months ago at
Yeah,
the cemetery?
be happy to do that.
Sorry.
As I said, we would be very happy to do that. Be happy to do that with you if you'd like. I think we've heard some consternation from folks who are volunteers, organizations that are associated with it, but nothing from Midwin itself. But again, be happy to meet with those folks. And I think we're talking about this committee, to make sure we're benefiting the community. And if you think it would be appropriate to have somebody from Midwin on that committee, I think it could make a lot of sense. And
Absolutely.
Also somebody from the cemetery.
Absolutely. And then you said 2 months ago you talked to the cemetery and you're still waiting for their answer, or you have an answer?
No, we submitted everything. I prepared a PowerPoint for them of how everything would work if they would like to do something. I don't, this is the federal government and the Veterans Association. They did not indicate that there would be any quick answers. But again, they had no other concerns. They weren't concerned about the bridge. They weren't concerned about the park. The park is almost 3 miles away from the cemetery. They were happy that we would be taking out the intersection of Ira Morgan completely. Ira Morgan is the closest intersection to the cemetery, and as I mentioned the other night, Ira Morgan, if it were to remain, would eventually service over 2 million square feet of industrial buildings, dumping out right there, just 2,000 feet away from the cemetery. So they're happy that that would go away. And like I said, their only issue, and it is an issue, I don't want to understate it, their issue is the lost trucks who on occasion will come in there and try to turn around. So we have some solutions for that if they're interested, and we would do it at our expense, and again, we would maintain it at our expense.
Okay, because I think it'd be a great idea to have someone from each of those entities, Medewan and Abraham Lincoln, on that committee, but I also think that you should contact them now and just see how things are with those folks, and so that they have any questions that they can be answered. And my other question is, I would like to see you have dialogue with not only the Elwood Police and Jackson Township folks, but also, well, with both, but the Joliet Police Department too, as far as you're going to be talking with your roads and what you're going to be doing with them, because these are going to have to be patrolled by not only our police, but I'm sure Elwood Police will be at that as well. So I know there were some issues at that last meeting that we had at the VFW, and so I was wondering if you had any dialogue with either one of those folks as of yet.
So we had a lot of dialogue, of course, with the Village of Elwood Police Department, and I believe it's your former chief is the chief there even. And a lot of the design of things you see, especially with the turnarounds, actually grew out of a lot of working sessions with him and Mr. Offerman, Chief Offerman of the fire department. So they've had a lot of input to the design of the park. But I did, Matt Robbins, Jackson Township, was at the meeting the other night, and I did say I would be very open at any time. Tell me what meeting you want me at, and I will be at the meeting. And I have met with, of course, the assessor, the road supervisor, and I talked to Matt for quite a while at the neighbor meeting.
When was that?
I have not.
When was that meeting?
I'm sorry?
When was that meeting you talked to?
Oh, the neighbor meeting.
Back in March?
The neighbor meeting we had at the VFW, I think you were there.
Yeah, that was back in March.
The second night, and yeah, that's when Matt was there. So I'm still waiting for that invitation to come, but I'm more than happy to be there whenever I receive that invitation.
So let me get this straight. You are waiting for him to call you to talk things over, is that correct?
Well, he said, you need to come see us. And I said, tell me when. I will come to any meeting you'd like me at.
I think
be
maybe
very
you
happy to. And again, I have met with the highway supervisor. I've met with the assessor, but I haven't been given the opportunity to be in front of the whole council, but happy to do it.
Well, I just think it'd be a good idea if you reached
And
out to them.
we did send them an email on March 10th to ask for that opportunity, and we have not heard back on that.
Okay, so I will ask for one more thing. If you could just please give them a call. And again, this is an important project to everybody, not only the people that live down there, but the people that are, involved in the township and the city itself. Like you said, the fire department, police department. I think all parties need to be talked to and should also, besides the Medewan folks and the cemetery folks, fire department, police department should also be part of this community besides some neighbors that live down there. And I would ask you to do that as well.
Absolutely, and very much agree. And again, I want to defer to you all as to who is on this committee, but a Jackson Township person to me makes a lot of sense. And so again, I'm happy to do it. Hopefully, we'll hear back from them when they'd like to see us. But very happy to have their involvement. I think it would be important.
Again, I would like you to reach out to them. You've already been waiting,
We
so
will do
just,
it again.
I would like you to call. Please, thank you.
We'll do it again, absolutely.
One follow-up to that, Tom. I don't know if you got it, Steve, I sent it to you. I had a resident who's opposed to the project who did ask if it was approved, if he would be considered for the committee. Steve, did you forward that?
I forwarded that, I believe, to Patrick Robinson.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I did receive it, and you know, again, I think somebody from the neighborhood north of Manhattan should be on that committee because they're, you know, they're our closest immediate neighbor. And but again, I don't want to be presumptuous here. You know, I'm going to follow your direction on who you'd like to see on it. I did, as I mentioned, we do intend. At the neighbor meeting, we made it clear to, there were two couples who were at the neighbor meeting, and they said, it'd be great if this gets approved, if you would come over and have a meeting just for our neighborhood. And I said, I'd be very happy to do that. So we will have a meeting, if we get approved, we will have a meeting with their neighborhood, just their neighborhood, because every other meeting, we get a lot of other folks there, and they don't get the attention they deserve. So we will be having a meeting with them specifically. But and I've met individually with two other couples in that neighborhood. So, but happy to entertain whoever you would like us to entertain to be on this committee.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anything else?
Mayor? No.
Yeah, Mike, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Mike. I forgot. Sorry.
That's all right. I think Larry kind of clarified it, but just so I understand, the contribution up front instead of $2 million will go to $5 million, but then that $3 million will come off at the build out in the end. So it's no new money, but it's just being redistributed. Is that correct?
Tom, did you hear the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that is what we understand it to be, and we're willing to do that.
And my only other comment is I did also get contacted by a property owner down there that is in the footprint who hasn't been talked to and hasn't been approached. So I would like to give that name to Jan Kloman, and she can add that to the one that she's going to give to you.
Yes, absolutely. And my apologies if somebody's been missed. I don't. Again, snafus do happen, and we will do everything we can to have a personal meeting with them. I will have a personal meeting with them.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
And I will just add that I have made it clear, you know, I've given everybody my email and my cell phone number. I am happy to sit down, and I have sat down. I've received personal calls. I've had long conversations with individuals. I'm always happy to do that. So anybody who is listening or anybody you want me to sit down with, I'm happy to do it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tom.
One more request.
Oh, I'm sorry, one more.
I'm
Hold
sorry.
on. One more.
I'm thinking of these things as we're going along. There's a subdivision in Cedar Creek, which butts up to Center Point. And they're right off of 53. And I would ask that you would have a meeting with those folks, even though they're out of your footprint, but they're off of 53. This will affect them, and perhaps one of those neighbors could be on the committee too to get their input as well.
Sure. Yeah, I know the neighborhood you're talking about, and they were involved, of course, when the project was looking at possibility of going into Elwood. But agree that they should be brought in to the fold here.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay. That's good. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Okay. All right. So I guess before we vote, I have some comments to make. But that's what we're doing next. We're going to vote next. Okay. Again, we've covered the background to this meeting. I don't know when we initially set the March 17th meeting. That probably would have been in February.
Plan Commission hearing was on February 24th, so literally upon their recommendation, we would have scheduled it.
So obviously, there was no knowledge of the COVID virus or what, I mean, you don't have to answer that. We all know that. So yeah, this meeting got set for March 17th. We had worked out an arrangement where we were going to allow 50 people in the room and allow for in-person comments after the citizen would speak, they would leave the room. That was within compliance of Governor Pritzker's orders. Someone notified the governor, because I got 2 calls the Saturday before March 17th from the governor's office about that, but I do have an email verifying that we were in compliance and giving us the thumbs up. If anyone needs to see that before you, because it's there. So that was met with fierce resistance, and I did see the point that potentially people were going to put themselves in harm's way, coming out in the public, coming to a meeting. So we canceled that March 17th meeting. The council canceled it. We rescheduled the public hearing. We canceled it the second time after Governor Pritzker's latest order extending the stay-at-home to the end of the month is when the council voted 7-1 to set the public hearing for Monday, which is what we did. I didn't vote on that, but I would have voted because, like I've said, I think a couple times publicly, I don't see an end to this. I think it's controversial to a lot of people right now because it hasn't been done before. I think this is going to be the norm for some time, but I guess time will tell on that. So for anybody who feels like they were disenfranchised, I apologize, but we are in compliance with what the governor has ordered and what the attorney general has ordered. This is a potential $1 billion project that's sitting in the pipeline, and I think, again, the great majority of the council, probably even some who may vote against this, felt it was time to move this forward. So that's where we're at. We conducted the meeting all week. I want to thank people who participated. I want to thank staff. These were long hours that were put in. Our IT team did a terrific job under the circumstances. First time we've done this. I have been contacted by several other cities who are using us as a model for how they're going to operate moving forward. So we were at the tip of the spear with this. I think we did it well. It obviously was controversial, and a lot of people called in and expressed outrage. But again, we followed the law, I believe. Marty, I think you confirm that?
Yes.
Okay, and we tried to make it as accessible as possible under these circumstances. This is obviously, well, I think in the 9 years I've been an elected official, 4 as a councilman, 5 as a mayor, this is the most contentious issue we've dealt with. I've dealt with similar issues, but not to the scope of this. A lot of the new development gets met with fierce resistance, but this certainly went beyond that, to the point where I think there actually were people who were being paid to run resistance to this. And maybe one day they could, if they want to talk about transparency, maybe they can disclose who paid them and how much. But beyond that, there's a lot of people who are very scared and very concerned. They think, and we've all gotten emails, probably dozens of them, that their lifestyle's in jeopardy, their houses are in jeopardy, their children's health or life is in jeopardy. And it's hard to say anything to somebody who believes that. I guess what I could say, I think I don't know if anyone was committed to this project completely prior to going down to Kansas City. I think everyone who went, and all but one of us went, all 8 council people, again, including people who may vote no tonight, was not impressed would be an understatement, because of what had been sold about what was in Kansas City was, and again, someone can step in if you want to correct me, it was virtually nothing like what the reality was. It was so much, Steve, that you called me from Kansas City and you said, yeah, I think if we just go back and tell the story, people aren't going to listen. We should pay to have the media come along. So I think it's somewhat, again, I haven't seen anything like this since I've been on the council. Not only did we go look at it, we brought media, we brought other people from the community to see it. So again, there's nothing, I'm not going to convince anybody, certainly not going to lecture, but if North Point follows through here with what they've done there, I don't think many of these fears will ever be realized by the community. That's my opinion. Regarding my thought process on this, and again, I've talked about it several times publicly, so I'll just really break it down to this. As the mayor, one of the things, maybe the primary thing that I've stressed is growth through economic development, through private development. Under my term as mayor, for the first time, the city hired its first economic development director. That was you, Steve Jones. I'm not going to take full credit. Councilman Hug, you had tried to push this through 4 years before, and the previous mayor and the previous city council shot down the idea of an economic development director. So we did that with Steve Jones. We put together the Economic Development Committee. The first 4 years of my first term, there was $1.4 billion in new private investment in Joliet. That's certainly something I was proud of. I think everyone on this council touted that, everyone who ran for re-election. And I have at every turn that what we're doing here works. So the idea of this type of development falls in line with my thinking. It also falls in line, I think, well, I know, as elected officials, we have a fiduciary duty to the people of Joliet. And specifically, when the issue comes between private development or raising revenues through tax increases, I've been consistent since I was elected 9 years ago as a councilman. It's a last resort in my mind at any time to have to raise taxes. I argued against them late last year with the budget. It was my goal prior to this pandemic and the shutdown to roll back those taxes as soon as possible. That may not happen now, but we will see with the economy and the rebound and how that happens. But yeah, the only thing I'll say, as far as people who have cast judgment on me and on the council, because they fundamentally think what we're doing is wrong. I don't believe there's anything wrong or immoral with creating jobs to allow people to provide for themselves and provide for their families. I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. And this isn't an issue of the 30 pieces of silver. The revenues that get raised off of this, and again, it is significant. We're talking over the life of it, hundreds of millions of dollars that are going to get pumped back in our community, and not just Joliet, into the community. Those revenues are used to pay for the essential services that people need. They're not just talking about the schools in the Park District and the library and Jackson Township roads, but also what Joliet provides: police, fire, water services, and ambulances. We are in the early stages of the water process. Alison Swisher spoke about it. This is something that should have been done 30 or 35 years ago. It wasn't. It's a little ironic that this is the council that's getting tagged for this, when this is the council that took the steps that should have been done a long time ago. But having said that, we know our water rates are going to go up. We know water is going to become more expensive in Joliet. It's going to become more expensive everywhere else. We have a significant amount of lower and lower middle class people in our city that have to have an affordable city to live in. The idea of raising taxes on people, on working moms, on senior citizens who are on fixed incomes, or people on disability who are on fixed incomes, it should be a last resort all the time. So that's my thought. And again, if I wouldn't have gone to Kansas City and saw for myself, I think the arguments and maybe the propaganda that's been going for several years probably would have been persuasive to me too. But that's all I'm going to say. I do want to thank the city council. I think everyone, one other thing. There's been, some of us have been the subject of a lot of social media attacks. So for what it's worth, Councilman Morris, you never slept during the proceedings. Councilman Hugg, you never slept during the proceedings. And no, I don't care what a caller says. If you want to go to the bathroom, you don't need to ask my permission. We're not kidding. But beyond that, I do thank the council. It's been a long process. I do thank the people who participated. I hope, I don't know how the vote's going to go, but either way, I hope that after this there'll be a way to try to bring our communities all together. And I'll leave it at that for now. If anyone else wants to chime in, or we can call the roll.
Mayor?
Yes.
First, I just wanted to add what you had explained about how we did not know, nobody knows when it will end, when this type of meeting requirement will end. Just to add to what you explained, this afternoon, many people are aware, Governor Pritzker has extended the shutdown of the schools through the end of the school year. So it's still not ending. With that said, if you don't mind that we can have some comments?
Sure.
There's a lot of things that can be said, and I'm not going to be long-winded on this. I'm going to say this up front. There's a lot, this is a contentious process, as the mayor pointed out, and it's a process that began in earnest back in January. And the folks that spoke here, regardless of where they were from, I'm going to apply some people are familiar with this, the 80-20 principle. 80% of the people, as I said Tuesday in my comments, while passionate, energetic, even at times angry, were good, honest, decent people, legitimately voicing, pouring their heart out to us about how it's going to change their lifestyle, how it will change from a farming community to a suburban or ex-urban feel. And I get that. There's 20% whose behavior ran the gamut of unacceptable behavior. I don't want to address that 20%. I don't want to even think about them. To the 80%, thank you. Honestly, I can speak for myself, and I know I can speak for the council. We listen to you. Whatever the outcome of this vote is, we listen to you. This, like so many decisions and problems, it's a complex process. The only example I'll give, but again, to the 80%, thank you. Thank you to the council and the staff that went through the same process as I did. Couple of clarifications. You mentioned some of the people doing the sleight of hand on social media, making accusations and false stories. I was the official timer, folks, for all nearly 300 speakers. That, for those that heard it or paid attention and heard that familiar bing, 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 that was my phone, my stopwatch. So no, as one person said, Councilman Hugg was writing down who was from what community. No, I didn't really care what community. I wanted to hear the people. My hand was moving here where you can't see me right now, see? And I'm turning on and off and pausing my stopwatch. Then I kept a very extravagant, very confusing accounting system so I can keep track for myself and the rest of the council out front here how many people had spoke. I made check, 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 /. Check, 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 /. That's what was happening on the paper back here. Today I walked to the back where we have 2 members of the media. I carried this piece of paper, folks. You can still FOIA it, I just don't want to overload our staff. The yellow part right here is the additional language that we put in just to put minds at rest in this preliminary prior to the vote process, that a bridge, no development. So you can FOIA it, sorry Krista, but this is what I walked back with. We have a Tribune representative and a Herald News representative sitting back there, and I wanted to make sure I didn't forget to let them see in writing the exact wording. So these types of things got really out of hand, but we move on. I've got thick skin. My daughter was a little girl, I used to say I had old man skin. So it's thick and that's tough. One last thing, a number of people did say you should just look at the emails you received and go by that, because I know that the emails you received were all against it and were, large. Again, I don't delete any emails locally from my iPad, and Krista, I think, and Marty can attest that even if I delete it, it's archived on it's not a mainframe anymore, in the cloud. So you can either meet me after we lift this ban and we'll count them on my iPad, or you can FOIA them. I didn't make my decision, and nobody up here, I believe, made it based on emails. If I took your advice, those that are opposed to the project, I started tracking and counting on a daily tally. The night that you folks, after North Point filed with the city, you set up a meeting at the Knights of Columbus. And then a week later, you had it at the Croatian Club. The night of the Knights of Columbus, 30 or 40 of the automated emails where you sign your name and click and send came. And I realized it's going to be contentious. So every day I updated it. I stopped counting them, and I can go back and update, but I stopped counting them on election day. At 11:30 in the morning is the last count I did in my log. At that moment, there were 494 that were against it. There were 1,348 that were in favor of the project. So no, you wouldn't want me to base it solely on counting emails. I myself, this council, the staff, and many of the folks that especially are opposed to this, we've done a lot of hard work in the last 3 months. We've done a lot of research. And so with that said, I'm not going to belabor any of the points. Again, I'm going to thank the 80%. I'm going to thank my colleagues. I'm going to thank the staff. And I'm going to finish my comments. And when it comes time to vote, I will vote. But I feel good about the due diligence that I've done and that I've seen others do. Thank you, Mayor.
I'll wait till the time to vote.
Okay, Terry?
Yeah, you know what, I was still wanting to get a little clear when you, Marty, or Steve, pre-annexation made me thought, like, Janet asked, when you say pre, like, something's gonna come after that, and that was very confusing. So you did say that the actual annexation will come back to the council.
Correct. So what this is this is essentially a binding agreement between 2 parties. So that's what the agreement is. And then subsequent to that, after the purchases are made by this group, then they will petition this particular body to annex and rezone.
What the actual and properties are?
Yes.
That'll be in it. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Mike, any comments?
None at this time.
Sherry, any comments?
Yes, I've written down some things that I just want to kind of let people know where my voting comes from. You know, this is certainly, there's been a great deal of emotion involved with this project, you know, for and against. And I've looked to all sides to gather the information and process it as I can make the most informed vote. And I feel very strongly about the fact that these containers are coming at a major increase, as we've been told by the BNSF, regardless of if we approve North Point or not. You know, we need to start taking control of the situation and get these trucks off of 53 and the other residential roads. I truly do believe in this closed system loop. If the containers are staying within the warehouse business parks rather than traveling out to these exterior warehouses, that is a minimum of at least 4 less trips per container on 53, 80, 55, or the other roads. You know, I've been threatened that a yes vote would bring an unsuccessful reelection, scrutiny, and unrelenting pressure for every vote going forward. And you know what? That's okay, because I base every vote I make on what, in the end, I feel is the right thing for Joliet, not what's best for me. And when I vote with integrity, because I don't vote under pressure or for anybody's pressure from any source. Times have certainly changed, like not one of us could ever have imagined since this discussion of North Point has begun. And, you know, we're cutting the city spending down to virtually nothing to get through this pandemic. I thought North Point project was a good project, especially after going to Kansas City as well, prior to the onset of this pandemic. But now I feel truly it would be irresponsible of me to turn down such a growth opportunity. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Don?
Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, this is a tough and very controversial vote. And no matter what anyone votes, you know, I certainly respect your opinion. You know, I don't think it's been easy for any of us. And, you know, I respect whatever you guys decide.
Thank you, Betty.
Yes, Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to address our residents, the council staff, everybody involved in this, as well as our neighboring communities. First, let me apologize to our residents and our neighboring communities. I sincerely apologize to all of you for the inconvenience that this council has put you through during this time. A pandemic is stressful enough without having to go through what you just went through. So I want to apologize to all of you for that. And I also want to thank the staff. I want to thank the residents who made their comments for or against. And I want you to know that I listened very carefully to what you were saying. And then those of you who emailed me, I tried my best to keep up with those and respond back to you. North Point, I want to thank you for hosting me in Kansas City. It gave me the opportunity to connect with your project, to answer questions, and to ask questions, I should say, and to listen to the residents on and off the tour. I was afforded an opportunity that I was able to speak with some residents before I got there, and then had the opportunity to do that while I was there. I just want to say that your project in Kansas is awesome. And I have to say that I don't know what I was expecting when I went down there. but I was totally awed by what I saw. And having said that, what I saw was great for Kansas. It was absolutely awesome for Kansas. I just cannot, I am so unconvinced that it would respond that same way here in Joliet. And I'm truly blessed to have my constituents in my district trust me enough to allow me to sit in the people's seat and working toward to improve the quality of life in Joliet. I want to be very, very clear that I am not against economic development. What I would love to see is diversity in that economic development. I would love to see the Hobo Bridge completed. I think that we have had this out there for a while. I know it's coming, but I wish it was here already. I would love to see our infrastructure that handles the traffic that we have now to be worked on and to be able to handle better the oncoming traffic that we're going to get from this project. So again, I'd love to thank you all. I love for the opportunity to be able to serve all of the residents that called in with your comments. Excellent comments, excellent questions that you had. And so, for myself, and I'd like to thank my colleagues too for the work that you put in already. So, but this agreement for me has some uncertainties that I'm still not ready for. So, as that, having said that, those are my comments, and I'll wait for the vote.
Okay. I think we're ready then?
Mayor?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
You know, I was gonna make my comments when I voted, but if you'd rather have me make them now and then just when we vote, we vote.
Well, whatever you're comfortable with. I think there's still more comments coming, so it's up to you.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay, you're not on.
So the vote would be as listed in the agenda, a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a pre-annexation agreement for 1,260 acres with Eastgate Logistics Park Chicago LLC for Compass Business Park with the following changes. And there are two. Section 3, paragraph A, add the following sentence. Any alternate location would require a bridge over Route 53 in order to provide safe and restricted access to the property. And number 2, Section 7, paragraph A, first sentence change 2 million to 5 million.
Can you repeat that, Marty? You got cut out. The last part.
Section 7, paragraph A, change 2 million to 5 million.
Okay.
And then also, the clerk could also call the mayor's name in this approach.
Yeah, if you could explain that, because there was confusion once before with this.
Sure, this is it's a 6 votes required for passage.
All right, so there is no tiebreaker.
There is no tie.
Okay, thank you.
Supermajority.
So is there a motion to approve Council Memo 222-20, a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a pre-annexation agreement for 1,260 acres with Eastgate Logistics Park Chicago LLC for Compass Business Park with these two changes? One, Section 3, paragraph A, the additional language of an alternate location would require a bridge over Route 53 to provide safe and restricted access to the property. And Section 7, paragraph A, changing the first sentence to say 5 million instead of 2 million.
So moved.
Second.
Been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Dickinson?
Is this a motion just to approve the changes or the actual vote?
This is the actual vote for the agreement with the changes.
Okay, before I vote, I have a couple comments. On March 5th, I drove down to Kansas City, and on March 6th, I woke up early, I went to breakfast in Riverside, and I talked with several residents. All of them had nothing but positive things to say about Compass. They spoke of how involved they are in the community. I thought their operation was first class. However, the infrastructure was there. They're right next to a highway. Here we are not. 53, 55, and 80 are a mess. We talk about how bad the I-80 bridge is all the time. Nothing's changed with that bridge. I drive on 53 Monday through Friday between the hours of 7 and 3:30. That is a scary, scary road. I can only imagine how the kids feel driving on it when they go to Joliet Central. When I go out to eat, to the car wash, the grocery store, everyone comes up and says, "Duck, you got to say no to North Point. We can't handle more trucks." It isn't just Elwood. It isn't Jackson Township, Manhattan. It's Joliet too. And the overwhelming majority don't want it. With that being said, I'm siding with the residents. I have to say no to North Point.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Yes, I really see and being involved with the traffic that we have right now. And for one, I know that anytime it takes me 35 to 40 minutes to make a left-hand turn on Bridge Street, being on the third car back from the traffic light, that's not acceptable. So as far as now, I choose the people over profit. I vote no.
Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Yeah, I just like to say too, Marty, it's still rolling around in my head, this pre-annexation agreement. So if it is approved tonight, and when the actual annexation agreement comes before the council.
No, not annexation agreement, annexation. That's just annexation.
So.
There's no more agreement.
So it's no more agreements. We would just be annexing the property.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. A couple other comments, Mr. Mayor. I believe, and nobody listening or here or anywhere else knows that we don't have a problem with trucks and traffic. I believe that North Point has went beyond what they need to do in order to try to curtail the traffic. The containers are coming. I mean, I've been told that not only by local BNSF people, but those in Chicago, in the train yards in the Chicago area. I have family members that work for the railroad. The containers are coming whether North Point is approved tonight or not. And I just think that's going to even enhance the problems that we already have, which we see we have. But I would like that this, what do we call in this $5 million? I'm going to say 5,000. I think Tom would like that. This $5 million, that some of those funds be put back into these areas for truck enforcement, for along with what North Point is going to do for the signage, because it's something more that we have to do to try to work with the all the residents, Elwood, Jackson Township, southern part of Joliet, in order to help with 53. And here's a word for you. We need a moratorium on warehouses on 53. I believe Tom spoke to it today. Putting any more warehouses on 53 is just going to add to the problem. The warehouses need to be either at North Point Pass or in Center Point, where we can control their movement to go back to 55 and to 80. 80, 55, hopefully with the state will be improved, hopefully right along the time that North Point is built out to its capacity as well as Center Point. But I do think that if those funds should be put back into that area for those things that I stated, and I would hope that the council, along with staff, could work toward that. And if this is approved. With that, I vote aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
I've made some notes, been asked by many people what my logic is for which way I'm going to vote. Similar to what Councilman Hug had said, we've all gotten many emails. I have not counted mine. I know there were hundreds a day. I'm sure we got over 1,000. I know all of us have sat here or at home for over 12 hours. Staff has been here double that time, getting everything ready and going on. Citizens, concerned citizens, I'm sure most of you have watched us for those same 12 hours or 12 hours plus, and I appreciate it. I'm happy that folks take politics or take this decision very, very seriously. But as the plaque behind the mayor shows you, Crossroads of America, that is Joliet. We have been proud of it all of our life. Today, Joliet is the largest inland port. The freight came first. Was going into Chicago Yard, and that became overcrowded. Center Point saw an opportunity to bring the warehouse closer to the rail and save time and money. We started this freight issue, our purchasing. We, the consumer, we, the general public here, our purchasing and shopping habits have changed over the years. We want it now, and we want it delivered to our doorstep. Traffic study many have called for. Why aren't we not waiting? The traffic study, I'm sure, will be excellent. But we all know the bigger picture of this traffic study is to get the trucks off the local roads. This study is just that, a study. It is not a mandate for the local municipalities to adopt. It is a study in a direction that they think would work for us. We know we got to get them off the local roads, but Route 53 is a state highway and they're allowed on it. Remember, we didn't sell this land. The farmers that own the land in question are the ones who sold it. Closed loop. This means the short haul container truckers will stay in this loop from the rail yard to the warehouses. We do not have this today. Yes, we have Center Point, but more warehouses are outside of the Center Point properties, up and down Route 53, Laraway Road, Route 80 and Route 55, from Morris, Manuka, Shanahan, Shorewood, New Lenox, Mokina, Frankfurt, Monee, Kankakee, Wilmington. Those warehouses are being serviced by these railroads, BSNF and Union Pacific. We, the city of Joliet, did not start this. This decommission of the Joliet Arsenal property by the federal government, which then had a property agreement between Center Point, BSNF Railroad, and the village of Elwood. I'm not placing blame on any party. The issues are here. They are not coming, they are already present. We do have to handle them, and that is our question. I think we, the city of Joliet, are best equipped to deal with the challenges and the opportunities. The closed loop business park will be the start. Yes, some missteps have been made in the past. We have learned from them. The Arsenal Road 55 interchange was completed thanks to Center Point in the state of Illinois. Soon, the Route 80 Hobolt Road Bridge will be started. I've been told Compass Business Park is the Trojan horse. I'm sorry, I have to disagree with that. The Trojan horse I see is already here. This is the BNSF Railroad and the Union Pacific Railroad. BNSF has a business plan for 2020 to do 1 million container lifts. Union Pacific calls for 600,000 lifts. Capacity for both facilities is less than 50% today. The freight is coming. These facilities and the railroad do not care how far we need to truck it to a warehouse. Yes, they would all like the warehouses to be closer to the rail yard so they can get their containers back and send them back to the West Coast. My vote is not about the money. Yes, the money is needed by everybody. But that would come from Compass Business Park. But it is about regulating the truck traffic. We need to work with the GPS systems, as you all heard the mayor and Compass talk about, that the truckers are using to eliminate them from getting lost in driving in areas that are not designated as truck routes. Amazon just raised their starting wage by $2. That's $17 an hour. And overtime, it will be paid now at double time, $34 an hour. As we have seen in the past, Amazon has been the pay leader of the warehouse industry. And others will need to follow if they hope to attract quality employees. For those reasons and others, I vote aye.
Councilwoman Coleman?
Well, Pat, that was quite the speech, and Terry as well. I won't repeat any of it because it's all true, and I agree with everything that Pat said and with what Terry said as well. This has not been an easy vote. I will say this, though, that my integrity has been questioned. I've been accused of taking bribes. I've been threatened. I have lined my pockets with all kinds of money. And if you really know me, you'll know that's not true. I drove down there. I spent 2 days down there. And I came home. And I also looked. It's an impressive park, and no one had any complaints about it, to be honest. And I talked to many people. I also yesterday drove up to Avenue O, where there is a fishery and wildlife park, which is right across the street from their current property that they have up in Chicago. It's not as big as this, no, it's not. But they've cleaned the area up, and what they said was true, that people go in there and they sit and they watch the birds and the wildlife. It's right on Wolf Lake. So I know that the one will be okay, because I know that was a concern. I can't say much more than what's already been said here. I've done my homework. It hasn't been easy. There's been pros and cons to everything. But I have taken no money. If you look at my D2, it's less than $500. My pockets are not lined. And I know that I'm going to get a lot of hate mail, because I've already gotten a lot of hate mail, a lot of hate phone calls, even before I knew how I was going to vote, because I didn't know until today what was going to happen. And I've been going back and forth here. And since the district councilman wants it, District 5, and what Councilman Mudron said about all the trains doing their thing, we need to get some type of handle on this truck traffic. And hopefully the state of Illinois will come through and fix these roads sooner than later. And so therefore, I will keep my eye on this. And I will vote aye.
Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
I too would like to thank the staff for the long hours they put in on this, and to present to us so we can make a good, decent decision. as it's been stated already, this has been a very tough and emotional time and an emotional vote. I think it was all played heavy on all of us. But I have heard from many Joliet residents who are opposed to North Point, citizens who have supported me throughout my career in office. Their main concerns are the increased truck traffic with this development. I understand the concept of the closed-loop bridge. However, eventually the 2,500 trucks into North Point and the 2,500 trucks out of North Point have to travel on I-55 and I-80, which cannot handle the increased capacity. I have heard from many of my friends in labor who also have supported me. I understand the job creation aspect. However, I do not believe that the $2.5 million which the city will receive at build-out is not enough, especially if we need to construct and staff additional facilities. I understand that some of my friends in labor are not happy with my position at North Point. However, I don't take votes personally, and I will continue to work that local labor be used on future projects that, as I have in the past, that I feel are a benefit to the city of Joliet. I vote no.
Mayor Odeker.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-3.
If I could make a couple comments, Councilman Morris, well, I do want to, I agree with the comments that were made during the vote. Councilman Mudrick, Councilwoman Reardon, when you talked about warehouses outside of these parks, I can't agree with you more. We negotiated and we left, frankly, a lot of money on the table to get this closed loop in the bridge. The idea, and I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, but the idea that we're going to keep putting warehouses on Laraway Road, on Route 53, it defeats the whole purpose of this. So I would suggest one vote, but going forward, if we're going to look at logistics or warehousing, we should look at it in Center Point or North Point. So I think it's an excellent point, Councilman. Number two, I've had these discussions for a couple of years now with a lot of different parties, with other mayors, with state reps, with some of the business people in town, about some type of comprehensive organization, gathering, whatever you want to call the term would be, but something that looks at what's happened in this entire region. And Councilman Mudrick, you broke it down real well. You left out Bolingbrook, Romeoville, Crest Hill. I mean, you could go on naming them all day long. A port authority was suggested by Senator Wilhelmy maybe 15 years ago when this was in its infancy stages, and it never got off the ground. I don't know what the answer is. I know, speaking with other mayors in other communities, there seems to be a real desire to have some type of regional oversight into what's happening. And this isn't, again, just South Joliet. It's everybody within the region. So it's something I absolutely am going to continue to pursue moving forward, because the idea being, if we vote no on this or on the next project, and they go down the road to Manuka, and all those trucks are on I-80, nothing's been solved, and vice versa. So our decisions are affecting other communities. Other communities' decisions are affecting Joliet and each other. So I think if we can establish some means of control or maybe some regional oversight into what's happening and make the growth responsible, I think it's overdue, but I think it's something I'm going to take the initiative on it and push moving forward. So those are my two thoughts. I know Planning Commission has more warehouses coming, but I'm just going to publicly urge that we have to start considering, especially, again, with what we just did, that there's room for these developments within these parks. So,
Mayor?
yes.
I've been thinking about a similar concept, and I agree. The onesie twosies, the smaller developments that have been going on outside of Center Point for going on 20 years, those have to come to a stop now. And I'm going to say the obvious. I am just as frustrated with our state government, who has neglected the roads around us for 25 years. The I-55, these are facts, folks. This is not pointing fingers. The I-55 has gotten 3 $150 to $200 million upgrades in the last 12 years. Nothing for us. New Lenox is getting a nearly $50 million upgrade for an exchange that doesn't have near the traffic that Chicago Street or Briggs Street is, has. Nothing for us. Now, Governor Pritzker has put together, and of course the COVID crisis and the following financial strain, a program that's called a $40 billion 10-year capital improvement, including 1.2, I believe, or 1.4 billion for the I-80 corridor. That dovetails great with this planned project, which total build out is 10 to 20 years. So they'll be growing and developing together. I heard, and again, that may be delayed now, there is some uncertainty, that the I-80 thing could be done within 5 to 6 years, with the capital bill. So I am appreciative that we have a capital bill, now we gotta make sure it gets done. And with that said, you make a good point about a regional approach. Now, the best way in industry to get other companies to do better is to bring in a company that does better than them, so they have to compete. And I think that's what we've just done with North Point. Other companies, current or future, that might have a business park of that size and anywhere in the area, they're being innovative in creating a new standard. So that may be something that center points, either of the center points, might look to and say, hey, to continue getting clients and customers, we need to meet that bar. With that said, because they've been so innovative within the park design themselves, they apparently have some pretty brilliant engineers. And maybe those engineers, they seem to want to help the communities that they build in so much. Maybe those engineers can be at our disposal when you lead the way to form a commission, a regional commission. Because we need somebody who can design the overall umbrella look of the region as you described it, with the innovative, forward-thinking process that they did this park.
Next would be public comment, but we have no speakers this evening for this section.
Okay.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Been motion and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
All right, thanks.
Meeting adjourned.